The last days of summer lingered in New Jersey. The air was still warm, the sky heavy with clouds. But in the world of the Soprano family, peace never came, no matter the season. The opening of the fourth season unfolded like a canvas layered with new balances, new reckonings, and old shadows. Tony's growing loneliness, Carmela's increasing doubts, Meadows' mournful distance, and the tensions within the mob all converged in this episode. The episode opens with Tony sitting alone in the garden one morning. Newspapers lie before him, a cup of coffee at his side. But Tony's eyes are lost in the distance. Another season may have passed, but Jackie Jr.'s death still echoes in his mind. Meadows' grief, Carmela's probing questions, and the constant tension with Ralph weigh on Tony's soul. The camera slowly moves in on his face. A leader who looks strong but within a fragile man. Meadow takes the spotlight in this episode. Since Jackie Jr.'s death, she has withdrawn into herself. She continues with university life, but her energy seems drained. In one scene, she sits in her room when the phone rings. Friends invite her out. Meadow pauses for a moment, then softly replies, "Not today." Her face is tired, lifeless. For her, Jackie Jr.'s death is not just the loss of a boyfriend, but a brutal reminder of how dark her father's world truly is. Tony wants to comfort her, but the distance between them has only grown. One evening, he sits by her side. "Life goes on," he says. Meadow averts her gaze. "Maybe for you," she whispers. Tony's face tightens. In her eyes, he sees not just grief, but hatred, a growing estrangement. Carmela, meanwhile, continues searching for her own path. The cracks in her trust toward Tony are now unmistakable. In one scene, she questions the source of his wealth. "Where does your money come from, Tony? What is our children's future built on?" Tony snaps back, "This is how our business works." But Carmela is not satisfied. A growing fear festers within her. What if one day everything is taken away? What if the FBI raids shatter their entire life? For the first time, her eyes reveal a quiet determination. Dr. Melfi's sessions again carry weight. Tony slumps in his chair. "My daughter is turning her back on me." Melfi calmly answers, "Maybe you need to let her find her own way." Tony bristles. "There's no way but mine." But even he is unsettled by his own words, because he knows very well what his way is built on. Blood, betrayal, and loneliness. Paulie's absence is felt too. Locked up, he sends word from inside. Without him, Ralph's position grows stronger. Ralph acts more confident, freer in front of Tony. But in Tony's eyes, he remains worthless. In one scene, Ralph mentions a horse, Pyomai suggesting an investment. Tony first appears uninterested, but the idea sticks. Ralph's obsession with money stirs Tony's own ambition. This moment foreshadows great events to come. Christopher plays a key role this episode. Tony slowly molds him as his heir. In one scene, he tells him, "You've got a big future." Christopher's face reflects both pride and fear. The words are both an honor and a burden. Tony entrusts him with more responsibility, overlooking his weaknesses, especially his growing drug use. It's the spark of a bomb that will one day explode. AJ remains the irresponsible teenager, lazy at school, uninterested in lessons. Tony yells, "Learn to be a man!" AJ averts his eyes. His father's demands are a foreign language to him. Carmela defends her son, but Tony's rage doesn't cool. For Tony, AJ's failures are reflections of his own weakness. Junior's trial continues. Surrounded by his lawyers, the old man schemes for survival. Age and illness weigh on him, but he still relies on his wit. Tony's expression in the courtroom is conflicted, fury at his uncle's betrayals, yet bound by family ties. Junior's legal strategy leans on frailty and sickness, a mirror of the family's reckoning with its past. Carmela's inner conflict intensifies. One night while Tony sleeps, she sits alone with a magazine in her hands. Tears well up. She knows deep down she can't truly be happy with Tony's money, with this life. Yet leaving isn't simple. Tony's shadow hangs over not only her but the entire family. like a heavy cloak. The climax of the episode comes when Meadow explodes at Tony. At dinner, she sits silently, then looks at her father with fury. Jackie Jr. died because in your world, people always die. Because of you, I always lose. Tony freezes, speechless. Carmela tries to intervene, but Meadow storms off. Tony's face twists with pain, masked by anger. In the final scene, Tony visits the horse Ralph had spoken about. In the stable, he strokes Pio Mai's head. The horse's bright eyes bring a brief smile to his face. But beneath that smile lies something else, a longing for purity in a world he cannot control. The camera lingers on Tony's tired, pained face, then pulls back. The horse's breath rises in the cold air as Tony's silhouette fades into darkness. Though summer warmth still lingered over New Jersey, inside the Soprano family blew a chill. No show centers on Meadow's choices about her future, Carmela's deepening doubts, and Tony's pressure both at home and in the business. The cracks within the family were no longer just noise, they had become fissures. Morning silence fills the Soprano home. Carmela makes breakfast while Meadow emerges from her room. Her face is still drained, her eyes dull. Since Jackie Jr.'s death, she has lost her spark. University has begun, but she hesitates to return. Carmela asks, "Did you renew your enrollment this semester?" Meadow replies shortly, "Not yet." Carmela looks worried. Tony enters and in a stern voice declares, "There's no room for hesitation. You're going back to college." Meadow looks away. Inside her burns the anger against her father's world. Her reluctance is the episode's core. With friends, she confesses she wants to take a gap year in Europe. For her, it's escape. For Carmela and Tony, it's unacceptable. They demand safety, structure, and control. For Tony especially, it signals a loss of authority. Feeling his grip slip, his rage rises. Carmela clashes harder with Tony. "Our daughter is growing up in the shadow of your dirty business. She wants her own path now." Tony snaps, "There's no way but mine." Carmela's eyes glimmer with pain. That's the problem. Their marriage once again enters bitter conflict. Meanwhile, Adriana's storyline deepens. FBI agent Deborah Ciccarone worms her way in with gifts and friendly chatter. Adriana, naive, takes it as genuine friendship. She glows with happiness at the attention. But the audience knows it's a trap. The Bureau wants to reach Tony through her. The tension runs quietly beneath the episode. Christopher continues proving himself to Tony. Entrusted with more tasks, he struggles as his drug use increases. Tony ignores the red flags. At a table with Silvio and Paulie, Christopher speaks, eager and distracted. Tony watches him out of the corner of his eye, seeing both promise and danger in the young man. With Paulie in prison, Ralph gains more space. He tests Tony's patience further. In the stable, he speaks again of Pio Mai. Tony gives a faint smile, but distrust lingers beneath. The hatred between them simmers with every word. Meadow's resistance to returning to school grows. Carmela pleads, "Your future depends on it." Meadow snaps, "My future is mine, not yours." Carmela freezes, stunned by her daughter's hardness. Meadow is no longer a child. Caught between her father's darkness and her mother's despair, she's becoming her own woman. Tony pours his frustrations to Dr. Melfi. "My daughter's defying me," he growls. Melfi calmly replies, "Maybe you should respect her choices." Tony laughs bitterly. "No one survives my respect." Half a joke, half the raw truth. In Tony's world, choices are weighed in blood and loyalty. Melfi's eyes show the contradiction, but Tony looks away. Adriana sinks deeper into the FBI's net, shopping, laughing, smiling, while Deborah's face stays cold, professional. The friendship is nothing but strategy. Adriana's innocence and blind devotion to Christopher lead her toward danger. Carmela's struggle grows heavier. In church, she prays silently, trembling, "God, give me strength to do what's right." But inside, she already knows the truth. She crossed the line long ago. Bound to Tony's wealth, comfort, and shadow, she's trapped. The episode culminates with Meadows' choice. She decides to return to college, but with reluctance. Carmela sees it as victory, Tony as reassurance. Yet Meadows' eyes still burn with rebellion. She agreed, but her heart still despises her father's world. The camera lingers on her face, haunted by the void Jackie Jr.'s death left behind. The final image is Tony sitting alone outside, smoking a cigar. From inside, Carmela's voice and Meadows' laughter drift out. But Tony's face holds no peace. He knows no matter how tightly he tries to control them, his family will follow their own paths, and those paths are far from his. As the camera pulls back, his lonely silhouette shrinks into the dark. The gray sky of New Jersey was heavy with rain-filled clouds. On the streets, people went about their daily lives, but in the world of the Soprano family, the atmosphere was as heavy and complicated as ever. The episode Christopher intertwines both a historical reference and the tensions within the family. Under Tony's leadership, the crew finds themselves caught in debates about Italian-American history, while Carmela and Meadows' voices grow louder. At the same time, the shadow of the FBI begins to fall over Adriana and Christopher's lives. The episode opens with an event that shakes the Italian-American community in New Jersey. At a university, a group is preparing to celebrate Christopher Columbus's arrival in America. But another group opposes the celebration, arguing that Columbus represents genocide and conquest. For the men of the mob, the issue becomes one of pride and identity. Tony, Silvio, and the others gather at Satriali's to discuss it. Silvio bursts out angrily, "Columbus is our ancestor. He brought us to this country." Tony listens in silence, his face indifferent. For him, Columbus's legacy is less a matter of pride than an excuse. Meadows sides with the opposition. With her university friends, she argues that Columbus's true face should be revealed. For her, it's not about identity, but about justice. Her father and uncles treating Columbus as a sacred figure only angers her more. During a family dinner, an argument erupts. Meadow confronts her father. "Columbus committed massacres, enslaved women. Celebrating him is nonsense," Tony snaps back. "You're denying our identity." Tension escalates at the table. Carmela tries to intervene but fails. This episode highlights the generational conflict between Tony and Meadow. Meadows' voice carries the search for justice, while Tony clings to his roots. But under the same roof, the two voices suffocate each other. Carmela is caught in the middle, torn between understanding Tony's pride and supporting her daughter's idealism. In one scene, she sits in silence, eyes distant, realizing the conflict points to a deeper fracture in family ties. Adriana's storyline grows more tense. FBI agent Deborah Cicciarone continues to get close to her, winning her trust and spending more time together. Adriana enjoys the attention of her new friend, but the audience knows she's walking straight into a trap. Her devotion to Christopher blinds her, while the FBI plans to use her to reach Tony. In a cafe scene, Adriana and Deborah laugh together, but the camera lingers on Deborah's cold gaze. This friendship is nothing but a mission. Christopher rises further in Tony's eyes this episode. Tony entrusts him with more responsibility. Christopher feels proud, but the pressure weighs on him. His drug addiction worsens, his nerves are frayed. Tony overlooks his flaws because he sees Chris as his heir. In one scene, Tony tells him, "Don't let me down." Christopher's face reflects both joy and fear, words that are both honor and chain. Paulie remains in prison, sending messages out to Tony. In his absence, Ralph's influence grows. Ralph continues to test Tony's patience. In one scene, he once again brings up the horse Pyomai. For a moment, Tony's face softens, but Ralph's tone ruins it. Tony listens, barely containing his loathing. Ralph's presence embodies Tony's clash between business necessity and personal hatred. Carmela presses Tony harder in this episode. She questions his lifestyle and financial ease. In one scene, she asks him, "What about my future, Tony?" What about our children's future? Tony responds angrily. This is how our business works. Carmela narrows her eyes and quietly withdraws. The voice inside her grows louder. This life cannot go on. Dr. Melfi's sessions remain key. Tony slouches in his chair, recounting the Columbus debate. Melfi calmly replies, maybe your daughter is right. History's shadows are not always what they seem. Tony erupts, my daughter should be on my side. Melfi's eyes point to Tony's inner contradiction. He demands absolute loyalty from his family, while denying them the freedom to choose their own paths. Meanwhile, Ralph makes a cruel joke about Ginny Sack's weight. On the surface, it seems like a trivial laugh, but in the mob world, it's deadly serious. Ginny is Johnny Sack's wife, and when Johnny hears of it, his fury is uncontrollable. Insulting a man's wife is the gravest assault on family honor. Johnny's rage grows to the point of demanding Ralph's death. When Tony learns of this, tension fills his face. Ralph is already a man he despises, but can't discard for business reasons. Ralph's lack of discipline, his violent tendencies, and constant testing of Tony's limits have worn his patience thin. Now Johnny's wrath adds to the fire. Tony knows this could spiral into bloody war. In the mob, pride sometimes outweighs money. At a meeting at Satriale's, Johnny Sack speaks openly. He insulted my wife. That means death. Tony listens in silence, tension etched on his face. Silvio and Paulie try to calm the room, but Johnny's eyes blaze with fury. Ralph's smugness only makes it worse. Tony faces a dilemma. Sacrifice Ralph to end the feud or keep him and risk breaking ties with Johnny. The decision means not just one man's life, but the future of two families' relations. Carmela's inner turmoil deepens. The tension of Tony's world suffocates her. In one scene, she sits in the kitchen alone, staring blankly while counting the money Tony brought home. But her face shows no peace. To her, money is no longer security. It's a symbol of Tony's betrayals and dark dealings. In a church scene, she quietly weeps, God, give me the strength to endure. Meadow remains undecided about returning to university. She spends time with friends, trying to distance herself from family. Her hatred of her father's world isolates her further. In one scene, she tells Tony, in your world, honor is protected with jokes. In mine, it's not. Tony's face tightens in fury. Her words sting with both truth and contempt. He doesn't yell, but his eyes burn. Adriana's entrapment by the FBI becomes clearer. Deborah pulls her in further. Adriana feels valued, but the audience sees the net tightening. Meanwhile, Christopher tries harder to prove himself to Tony. Given more responsibility, his drug use undermines him. In one scene, Tony warns him, in this world, mistakes aren't forgiven. Christopher lowers his head, unease in his eyes. The conflict between Ralph and Johnny Sack escalates. Johnny demands Ralph's death. Tony struggles with the decision. Ralph disgusts him, yet remains valuable for business. In one scene, Tony sits alone in his car, lost in thought. Either Ralph must die, or his alliance with Johnny will break. It is not just about one man. It's about the balance of power itself. Ultimately, Tony finds a diplomatic compromise. Ralph refuses to apologize, but under Tony's pressure, he agrees to remain silent. Johnny Sack, though still furious, temporarily backs down. Tony prevents a bloody war for now, but his face still carries tension. He knows such matters never truly end. Ralph invites Tony to the horse races. With his flashy mannerisms, Ralph takes Tony to the racetrack. The powerful steps of the horses echo across the field. Ralph excitedly introduces his horse to Tony. Pyomai, slim, graceful, and strong. At first, Tony seems uninterested, but once the race begins, the grace and determination in Pyomai's run spark a glimmer in Tony's eyes. The horse runs with all its might and wins. Ralph shouts with joy, while Tony's face shows a quiet admiration. In Tony's world, almost everything is rotten. Yet the pure struggle of this animal reminds him of something he had forgotten: innocence. Ralph shares part of Pie Oh My's winnings with Tony. But for Tony, it's not just about money. A strange bond begins to form between him and the horse. The next day, Tony visits the stable. When Pie Oh My sees him, she turns her head, her eyes calm and trusting. Tony reaches out and touches her mane. In that moment, a sense of peace appears on his face. There are very few things that bring Tony true joy, but the purity he sees in Pie Oh My's eyes begins to soothe the wound within him. Carmela notices Tony's interest but cannot understand it. In one scene, she asks him in the kitchen, "Why are you spending so much time on a horse?" Tony answers with a smile, "Because she gives me peace." Carmela frowns, because what brings Tony peace is not her presence, but something else, someone else. Her growing loneliness deepens even further because of this new passion of Tony's. Meadow grows even more distant from her family. She continues with her college life, but her heartbreak has not healed. Jackie Jr.'s death still echoes in her mind. The anger she feels toward her father's world emerges in every conversation. When Tony tries to talk to her, Meadow brushes him off with short answers. At a dinner table, Tony turns to her and asks, "Is everything okay?" Meadow averts her eyes and simply says, "Yes." But the expression on her face clearly shows her distance from her father. Christopher's story grows more dangerous in this episode. Tony gives him more responsibility, but Christopher's drug addiction becomes a major obstacle. In one scene, Christopher argues with Adriana at home. Adriana realizes he is using heroin and cries, "If you keep this up, you'll lose everything." Christopher yells back in anger, but deep down he is afraid. Tony's expectations are heavy, and his will is weak. Adriana is pulled further into the FBI's trap. Deborah continues to get closer, acting like her confidant. Adriana opens up about her fears, about Christopher's addiction and Tony's business. For the FBI, this is gold. Adriana doesn't realize it, but every word pulls her deeper into the net. The tension between Ralph and Tony is also felt through Pie Oh My. Ralph, as usual, is rude and careless. In one scene, while Tony is at the stable caring for Pie Oh My, Ralph walks in and mockingly says, "You're spending too much time with that horse, Tony. Maybe you should marry her." Tony's face hardens. The joke feels like an insult to his bond with the horse. Ralph's indifference only fuels the growing hatred in Tony. But Tony stays silent, because at that moment, in Pie Oh My's presence, he doesn't want to reveal his rage. Carmela feels her loneliness even more. In one bedroom scene, she expresses her worries about the future. "Our children's future, my future. Your money is dirty, Tony. One day it will all be taken from us." Tony snaps, "My money feeds all of you." Tears form in Carmela's eyes. What she wants is not just money, but love, trust, and peace. And she gets none of these from Tony. Johnny Sack's anger toward Ralph continues to simmer. The cruel joke about Ginny Sack's weight deepens his hatred. In one scene, his eyes burn with fury as he tells Tony, "This isn't over." Tony tenses, knowing Ralph is not only a threat to business, but also to his own peace of mind. The final scene focuses on Tony's bond with Pie Oh My. Tony visits the stable at midnight. Ralph is nowhere to be seen, only Tony and the horse. He approaches, strokes her mane, and finds peace in her eyes. The horse's calm breathing quiets the storm in his heart for a moment. Tony whispers, "You're the only pure thing in this world." The camera lingers on Tony's face. In his eyes, both exhaustion and a flicker of hope appear. Then it slowly pulls away. The steam from the horse's breath rises into the cold night and disappears. Another gloomy evening in New Jersey. Gray clouds moved slowly across the sky. Life in the Soprano household went on, but Tony's soul was deeply restless. Everybody Hurts is an episode that centers on Tony's moral reckoning, his confrontation with the lives he's touched and destroyed. It reveals the small fragment of conscience still buried within his dark leadership. The episode opens with Tony watching television. While Carmela works in the kitchen, Tony flips through channels and recognizes a familiar face. A man who once was Artibuco's old friend. Someone Carmela also knew, now appearing in a film. Tony's mind drifts to the past. He remembers people he once knew but lost along the way. This stirs unease in him. In his world, most people ended up dead, in prison, or disappeared. Tony's mood turns into an inner journey. In therapy with Dr. Melfi, he says, "Sometimes I think I've ruined everyone who's ever been in my life." Melfi calmly replies, "That thought itself shows your conscience still works." Tony laughs angrily. "My conscience doesn't make me money." Yet the shadow in his eyes shows even he doesn't believe his own words. Carmela's internal conflict grows stronger. Tony's coldness makes her increasingly lonely. In one scene, she sits alone in the kitchen with an empty coffee cup before her. Her lips move in a quiet prayer, "Give me patience." But there is no answer. Her loneliness now comes not only from her marriage, but from life itself. AJ appears briefly. After receiving bad grades, Tony yells at him. The blank look on AJ's face only fuels Tony's rage. He sees his younger self in his son, laziness, apathy, avoidance of responsibility. For a moment, fear flashes across Tony's eyes. He'll repeat my mistakes. Meadow remains melancholic under the shadow of Jackie Jr.'s death. Her relationship with Tony is distant. In one scene, she ignores his phone call while walking across campus. Tony grows angry, but deep down he feels wounded. Losing his daughter's love feels heavier than losing his entire empire. Tony's journey into the past deepens. One night he attends the funeral of an old acquaintance. Surrounded by faces aged by time, he quietly stands by the casket. Looking at the deceased, he wonders, did this happen because of me? The camera lingers on his face, revealing guilt in the eyes of a man who always seemed unshakable. Christopher's arc is short but important. Tony gives him work, but his drug habit grows worse. Adriana worries, while Deborah tightens the FBI's grip. Adriana confides, "Chris is disappearing more each day." For the FBI, this is a victory, but Adriana remains oblivious. Ralph continues to test Tony's patience. Yet Tony pays less attention to Ralph's jokes and arrogance, because another weight hangs over him, the ghosts of his past. Compared to his conscience, Ralph's noise is insignificant. The climax of the episode is Tony driving alone at night. An old song plays on the radio. His mind floods with memories of dead friends, abandoned people, and broken ties. His face darkens. At a gas station, he steps out of the car, looks up at the sky alone, no one around him. Yet his mind is crowded with faces. The camera lingers on him before pulling away. Tony meets with Assemblyman Zellman, a former politician. Zellman tells Tony that money can be made through the state's low-income housing projects. For ordinary citizens, this plan might look like a hopeful social initiative. But for the mob, it is an opportunity. Funds and contracts, redirected through back channels, could turn into enormous profits. A calculating glint appears in Tony's eyes, because in his world everything boils down to money, control, and power. Paulie is still in prison and sends word from the inside. His absence is both a loss and a relief for Tony. Without Paulie, Ralph takes on a more prominent role. As always, Ralph is loud and mocking. In one scene, he talks to Tony about his horse, but Tony's mind is elsewhere. He pretends to listen, his face impatient. For Tony, Ralph has become not just a business partner, but a burden. Carmela presses Tony harder in this episode. She asks about household expenses, the children's future, investments. Tony responds angrily, "I pay for everything, what more do you want?" Sadness appears in Carmela's eyes. Because what she wants isn't just money. It is love, loyalty, and security. But Tony fails to give her these. In one scene, Carmela sits quietly in church, praying. Her whispered words sound like a plea. "God, guide me to the right path." But there is no answer. Meadow appears briefly but importantly. She attends a school event with her friends. She is trying to build a life far from her father's world. When Tony sees this independence, he feels both pride and unease. His daughter's choice of her own path is also proof that his control is slipping. Christopher takes on a bigger role alongside Tony. During Zellman's meetings, Chris's excitement is noticeable. Tony begins to trust him more, yet Chris's eyes still reveal weakness. His drug addiction clouds his judgment. Adriana worries. In one scene, she shouts at him, "You trust Tony, but you're ruining your own life." Chris responds angrily, but guilt is written on his face. Adriana continues to be drawn into the FBI's trap. Deborah grows closer to her. They go shopping together, talk like friends. Adriana feels valued, but in reality she is being lured step by step into a trap. Her innocence is worth gold to the FBI. Meanwhile, Zellman's plan becomes more serious. The housing area set for demolition is a home for poor families. But for Tony and Zellman, it's nothing more than a profit scheme. Tony sees no ethical side to the deal. All that matters is the flow of money and power. In one scene, residents protest against eviction. Tony watches from his car with a look of disdain. In his world, other people's pain is insignificant compared to his own profit. When Carmela hears about the project, she is disturbed. "Destroying poor people's homes. Is that right?" she asks. Tony shouts back, "That luxury bag you carry, that's where the money comes from." Carmela falls silent, her eyes filling with tears, because Tony's words are true but cruel. The life she lives is built on the loss of others. The tension between Tony and Ralph lingers. Ralph pushes to have more say in business. Tony's patience wears thin, though he remains quiet for now. Ralph's presence is like a shadow over him. Silvio and Christopher remain caught in between, while Tony's face reveals suppressed rage. The climax comes when Tony confronts Zellman. In one scene, Zellman pressures him for greater profits. Tony listens silently, then suddenly beats him. Zellman falls to the floor bloodied. Tony's face shows a mix of anger and satisfaction. He lashes out not only for money, but also from the fear of losing control. Ralph is involved with a woman named Valentina, beautiful, unusual, and free-spirited. She is attractive, witty, and playful. But Ralph's dark fantasies taint their relationship. He shows sadistic tendencies, and the unease on Valentina's face makes it clear. Even in his personal life, Ralph's cruelty mirrors the darkness of his business. Tony learns about this relationship. When he meets Valentina, he is captivated by her charm. Even in Ralph's presence, Valentina casts glances at Tony, filling the air with dangerous tension. In Tony's eyes, there is desire and curiosity, because what Ralph holds, Tony also wants. His hunger is not limited to money or power. Women, pleasures, and control are challenges he cannot resist. Carmela feels her loneliness deepen. Her marriage with Tony grows colder. In one scene, she sits at home having coffee with Rosalie, Ralph's mistress and widow of another mobster. Rosalie is still in mourning for her husband, but Carmela's eyes reflect a different emptiness. Though still married, she feels utterly alone. She hints at Tony's infidelity and distance. Rosalie gives her a pitying look. This moment underscores the storm raging inside Carmela. Meadow appears briefly again. She has returned to college, but reluctantly. Her relationship with Tony is tense. Her bond with Carmela is distant. There is hopelessness in her eyes. The shadow of Jackie Jr.'s death still lingers. Even her short scenes show how the younger generation of the Soprano family is seeking a life outside of this darkness. Adriana's story also continues. FBI agent Deborah draws even closer. Adriana begins to open up to her, confessing her fears. Christopher's drug addiction, Tony's business, her own anxiety. For the FBI, these confessions are priceless. Adriana feels relieved yet afraid, still unaware it is all a trap. The most shocking moments of the episode reveal Ralph's perversions. Valentina confides in Tony about Ralph's disturbing fantasies. Tony can barely believe what he hears. Ralph's twisted, violent desires disgust him further. Tony already disrespected Ralph as a business partner. Now learning about his private life, his contempt grows deeper. In one scene, Tony confronts Ralph, who laughs and shrugs it off. But anger flashes in Tony's eyes. Ralph is no longer just a business liability. He is a burden in every sense. Carmela becomes more direct with Tony. At a family dinner, she looks at him and says coldly, "Will nothing ever change for me?" Tony stays silent, his mind on Valentina. Tears appear in Carmela's eyes, but she remains quiet. Their marriage has become a place where feelings are no longer spoken, only silence, anger, and escape. Valentina's attraction to Tony forms the episode's most dangerous thread. The pull between them grows. Ralph's woman becomes Tony's new desire. In Tony's eyes, it is not only lust, it is also a challenge to Ralph. Ralph is worthless to him. Having his woman is not just desire, but a statement of superiority. The episode closes with Tony and Valentina together. While Ralph is absent, Tony goes to her. Their secret intimacy begins. The camera lingers on Tony's face, showing both desire and guilt. Because for him, this is not just an affair. It is a move against Ralph, a challenge, a display of power. As the camera pulls back, Tony's shadow grows larger in the darkness. The gray sky over New Jersey casts silence on the town's streets. But in the world of the Sopranos, silence never meant peace. Whoever did this tells the story of Tony's relationship with the man he hated most, Ralph Cifaretto, bringing a simmering tension to its breaking point and ending in an irreversible fracture. This episode is not only about a reckoning, but also about Tony confronting the darkness within himself. Ralph's horse, Pi Oh My, has died in a fire. The stable burned down in the middle of the night. When Tony hears the news, shock appears on his face, because Pi Oh My was not just a business investment, but a symbol of innocence. When Ralph tells him, he seems indifferent. "These things happen," he says. But Tony's eyes freeze. Ralph's carelessness fuels his suspicion. Was the fire an accident, or did Ralph do it for the insurance money? Tony goes to the stable, standing before the charred remains. The air still smells of smoke. The horse's burned skeleton is seared into Tony's memory. His face shows silent rage. Silvio and Christopher stand beside him, but no one dares approach, because in his eyes, Tony's deepest vulnerability has been laid bare. For the first time, his heart is crushed not by a person's death, but by the loss of an animal. Meanwhile, Ralph is dealing with his own crisis. His son Justin has a terrible accident while playing in the yard. An arrow pierces his eye. The boy is rushed to the hospital, his life hanging in the balance. For the first time, Ralph's face shows real pain. His usual mockery is replaced with panic and despair. But in Tony's eyes, even this does not redeem him. Tony watches Ralph pray at his son's bedside, but feels not empathy, only anger. Pi Oh Mai's death still burns in his mind. Adriana feels the FBI's pressure closing in. Deborah gets closer, asking more questions. Adriana lives in fear, torn between her love for Christopher and the trap tightening around her. Christopher's drug addiction has worsened, straining their relationship. In one scene, Adriana weeps alone in the bathroom. Both the FBI's net and Christopher's collapse suffocate her spirit. Carmela grows even more alienated from Tony. To her, he is not only unfaithful, but soulless. In one scene, she stares at him coldly in the kitchen and asks, "Is there still any good left in you?" Tony doesn't answer. His mind is fixed only on Ralph. The climax comes when Tony confronts Ralph in his home. Ralph greets him with a fake smile. Their conversation quickly turns into a fight. Tony brings up Pi Oh Mai's death. Ralph sneers, "If you loved that horse so much, maybe you should have married it." That breaks Tony's last shred of restraint. Punches fly. The two men wrestle on the floor. Tony's rage, fueled by every insult Ralph had ever thrown, explodes. He strangles Ralph, his eyes burning with fury. Ralph's screams fade, his breath stops. Finally, Tony kills him. Only heavy breathing and silence remain in the room. Tony stares at Ralph's lifeless body. His eyes hold both rage and emptiness. This is not just an enemy's death. It is his own darkness revealed once more. He calls Christopher. Together they dismember Ralph's body, dragging him into the bathtub. The camera lingers, their hands covered in blood, their faces grim. Their bond deepens, but is now sealed by a darker secret. Meanwhile, word comes that Ralph's son is still fighting for his life in the hospital. For a moment, guilt flickers in Tony's eyes, but then his face hardens. Because in his world, regret means weakness. Tony tries to conceal Ralph's absence. He tells others Ralph may have gone to Florida. Silvio and Patsy whisper about his disappearance. Everyone's face shows suspicion, but no one dares ask Tony directly. Because in the mafia world, men like Ralph don't just vanish. Still, Tony maintains a calm facade. He even tries to turn Ralph's absence into a business opportunity, but Pyomai's ghost still haunts him. In a dream, he sees the horse. Pyomai stares into his eyes, then vanishes in flames. Tony wakes up drenched in sweat. He walks into the yard and looks at the sky. Tears well, but he does not cry. The camera pulls away as his lone silhouette dissolves into the night. The episode's title appearing, Whoever Did This? The answer is clear. Yet in Tony's world, nothing is ever spoken aloud. Days pass with Ralph still missing. Tony knows the truth but tells others, maybe he went to Florida. Silvio and Patsy continue speculating. Suspicion lingers, but no one confronts Tony. Ralph's disappearance is too unusual to ignore. Still, Tony wears his mask of calm, channeling it into business. Christopher's arc dominates the episode. His drug addiction spirals further. In one scene, Adriana finds him using heroin at home. She panics, crying, "If you keep this up, you'll die." Christopher lashes out angrily, but his voice shakes. He knows he's losing control. Word spreads through the crew. Silvio and Paulie tell Tony, Chris can no longer be trusted. Tony's face shows fury, but also fear, because Christopher is more than a soldier. He is Tony's heir, almost a son. Adriana, meanwhile, is crushed by the FBI's grip. Deborah keeps meeting her, and Adriana confides. Christopher's addiction, Tony's world, her fears. Deborah listens, catching every detail. Adriana remains blind to the trap. All she wants is a peaceful life with Christopher. But the FBI's strings are tightening. Carmela grows colder still. In one scene at home, she tells Tony flatly, "I don't feel anything with you anymore." Tony stays silent, his mind still haunted by Ralph's death and Pyomai's ghost. Carmela leaves the room in tears. For her, the marriage is nothing but formality now. Christopher's addiction causes more cracks within the crew. Paulie and Silvio confront Tony. Chris can't handle things. He keeps disappearing. Tony slams his fist on the table but then buries his face in his hands. Losing Christopher would mean losing not only a soldier, but his future. The episode's second climax comes when Christopher nearly dies of an overdose. One night he collapses unconscious. Adriana panics, wanting to call an ambulance but stops, afraid Tony will find out. In tears, she tries to save him herself. His breathing falters, then he stirs awake. Adriana clings to him, sobbing. "If something happened to you, I couldn't live," Christopher whispers weakly. It won't happen again, but the audience knows it's an empty promise. When Tony hears, his face shows both anger and sorrow. In a session with Dr. Melfi, he confesses, "My future is in this kid's hands, and he can't even control his own." Melfi answers gently, "Maybe that expectation is just a reflection of your own emptiness." Tony falls silent, because once again she has struck the truth. Tony visits Christopher and Adriana. His face is stern, but his eyes betray a hidden softness. Looking at Christopher, he says, "Get your act together. This business is no joke." Christopher lowers his head. Adriana says nothing, tears running down her face, because she is more trapped in this world with each passing day. Tony has a dream. In it, he is walking through a forest. Silence rules among the trees. He sees a door, and behind it are old faces, men long dead. He tries to open it, but the door is heavy, as if the weight of all his past sins is holding him back. He wakes up drenched in sweat. The dream is a symbol of Tony's regrets and his fears for the future. Pyomai's eyes, Ralph's mocking voice, his mother's shadow, they all blend into this dream. In the morning, Tony is quiet. Carmela comes to him, talking about daily matters, but Tony's mind is elsewhere. Sitting on the bed, he looks at Carmela with weariness in his face. In her eyes there is disappointment, because what she has wanted from him for years is simple: love, trust, sincerity. Yet Tony's soul is too burdened to give any of those. Junior's trial takes center stage in this episode. His frail, aging presence in court evokes pity. His lawyers try to prove that his mental health is failing. Sometimes Junior pretends to forget. Sometimes he is truly confused. Tony sits in the courtroom, his face a mix of anger and grief, because his uncle is both an enemy and family. This inner conflict becomes sharper during these trial scenes. Christopher remains by Tony's side, but his addiction leaves him unfocused. Adriana fears for him. At home, they argue. "You're killing yourself," she says. Christopher yells, then falls silent. His collapse eats away at Adriana's spirit as well. Deborah continues tightening the FBI's grip, and Adriana, through tears, confesses Christopher's state. The scene shows how the Bureau's plan is closing in. Carmela, meanwhile, faces her own loneliness. In a talk with Rosalie, she voices her fears about the future. Tony's indifference pushes her further into emptiness. In one scene, she confronts Tony. "I don't trust you anymore." He stays silent. That silence cuts Carmela deeper than anger ever could. Tony's dreams recur throughout the episode. In another, he is behind the wheel of his car. A woman sits in the passenger seat, but her face is blurred. Her voice merges with his mother's. Tony wakes up in fear. These dreams are symbols of the guilt and dread lurking in his subconscious. He tells them to Melfi. In a calm voice, she says, "Maybe the past won't let you go." Tony snaps, "I'm trying to bury the past, but it keeps coming back." Johnny Sack also appears. With Ralph missing, suspicions still hang in the air. Johnny looks at Tony with a questioning gaze, but makes no direct accusation. In Tony's eyes, however, is a cold warning. The matter is closed. Yet the audience knows that in the mafia world, nothing ever really ends. Carmela, faced with Tony's neglect, begins looking elsewhere. At home, she has conversations with another man, a family acquaintance involved in speculative finance. In her eyes, a spark of interest briefly shines, but it is only a reflection of the love she craves and cannot get from Tony. The final scene closes with another dream. Tony is on a boat, the sea rough, the sky dark. In the distance, a faint beacon appears, but its light is weak. Tony tries to steer, but the boat sways. He is alone. He wakes up gasping for air. He goes out into the yard, looking up at the sky. His eyes show both exhaustion and fear. The camera slowly pulls away. His solitary silhouette shrinks into the night. The episode title appears, "Calling All Cars," because Tony's inner scream is, in truth, a call for help that no one will ever hear. Carmela lies alone in the bedroom, feeling Tony's distance even when he is beside her. In her hands is an old children's book, Eloise. For her, it is not just a story, but a memory of the warmth of the past. As she turns the pages, her gaze drifts to Meadow's childhood years. She longs for that innocence but cannot find it anymore. Her marriage with Tony has become nothing but a heavy weight. Meanwhile, Tony faces new problems in business. After Ralph's disappearance, he gathers his crew to fill the void. Silvio, Paulie, and Christopher sit at the table. Nobody speaks of Ralph, but everyone feels the gap. Tony sits quietly, smoking a cigar, his eyes vacant. Ralph's death still weighs on him. At the same time, Paulie's loyalty comes into question. He has been in contact with Carmine, and Tony knows it. Distrust flickers in his eyes when he looks at Paulie. Christopher's addiction resurfaces. Adriana struggles with him, but grows increasingly worn down. Deborah tightens the pressure. Adriana's eyes are filled with despair. Christopher's downfall draws her closer to the FBI and leaves her more exposed in Tony's world. Carmela seeks emotional refuge elsewhere. Her hidden feelings for Furio intensify. In one scene, she is alone with him in the kitchen. They say little, but their eyes say more. For a moment, Carmela's eyes shine, then dim, because she knows her feelings are forbidden. Tony's shadow looms over everything like a threat. In therapy, Tony recounts another dream. This time there is a bear. In the dream, he sees the bear in his yard and tries to approach, but it retreats. Melfi calmly says, "Maybe this dream reflects the things slipping away from you." Tony snaps back, "The only things that slip away in my life are the things I choose to lose." But in his eyes, alongside the anger, there is fragility. He knows control is slipping from his hands. Meadow, meanwhile, tries to build her own life in New York. Carmela speaks to her on the phone, but feels the distance. Meadow's choices bring both pride and grief, because her children growing up and moving away means Carmela is left even lonelier in her marriage. Paulie's story carries weight here. He questions his loyalty to Tony. Rumors circulate that he has been in touch with Johnny Sack. When Tony hears, his face turns cold. Alone with Paulie, he looks him in the eye. "Loyalty is everything, Paulie." Paulie lowers his head, but unease shows in his eyes. In Tony's world, Paulie is no longer as safe as he once was. One of the harshest moments between Carmela and Tony comes at the dinner table. Suddenly, Carmela erupts. "I've endured you for years, but there's no me anymore, no us." Tony fires back angrily. "This house is still your safe place. Who else could give you this life but me?" Carmela breaks down in tears. For her, marriage is nothing but a chain now. Furio reappears in this moment. After her fight with Tony, Carmela finds herself alone. She locks eyes with Furio. No words are spoken, but silence says everything. Her heart races, but Furio looks away. He knows too that this feeling is impossible. Back in her bedroom, Carmela holds Eloise once again. She flips the pages, her eyes distant. Tony is in another room watching TV. The house is quiet, but this silence is only the echo of their disconnection. The camera lingers on Carmela's eyes. They hold both longing and despair. For her, Eloise is the symbol of lost innocence and a love that will never return. Tony sets his sights on a grand, luxurious house by the sea, Whitecaps. To him, it's not just a summer home. It is a guarantee of the future for his family. He makes an offer to the owner and pays a deposit. When he takes Carmela to see it, her face briefly lights up with excitement. The view of the ocean through the windows, the spacious rooms, the sunlit veranda. For a moment, Carmela seems rejuvenated. Tony smiles too, because he hasn't seen that glow on her face in a long time. But the happiness doesn't last. The dream of Whitecaps begins to shatter as soon as it's imagined, because Carmela's heart already belongs elsewhere, to Furio. His quiet, gentle presence touched her soul in a way Tony's rough, distant love never could. But Furio has already disappeared, having returned to Italy. What remains in Carmela is the hollow space he left behind. One night, as the house is silent, the phone rings. Carmela answers. On the other end is Irina, Tony's former mistress, but she is not alone. With her is Svetlana, another of Tony's affairs. The woman's voice pierces Carmela's heart like a knife. Tony's infidelity is no longer something that can be hidden. It is undeniable truth. Carmela hangs up, tears welling in her eyes. Years of pent-up anger finally burst to the surface. What follows is one of the show's most unforgettable family arguments. Carmela screams at Tony, "For years you've cheated on me. Women, lies. I've had enough." At first, Tony says nothing, then explodes, "This is my life. And you knew it." The shouting grows louder, echoing through the whole house. Meadow and AJ retreat to their rooms, silently listening to their parents' war. Carmela cries, "I loved you, Tony, but you never looked at me." Tony roars back, "Family was everything to me." Carmela gives a bitter smile. "No, Tony, family was only an excuse for you. The fight is long, heavy, and brutally real. Every word bottled up for years is unleashed at once." There is no remorse on Tony's face, only rage. On Carmela's face, heartbreak and exhaustion. Everything long suppressed is now exposed. Meanwhile, Paulie deals with his own problems. He tries to prove his loyalty to Tony, downplaying his contacts with Johnny Sack. But Tony's mind is elsewhere. The collapse of his marriage overshadows every business concern. Christopher remains at Tony's side, but his addiction is still festering. His relationship with Adriana worsens. Through tears, Adriana yells at him, "I can't live this life anymore." Christopher stays silent, eyes lowered. Their story, like Tony and Carmela's, edges toward collapse. Carmela finally reveals the secret she has long kept inside. "I was in love with Furio." Shock, then fury, flashes across Tony's face. His fist clenches, his eyes burn, but Carmela continues through her tears. "He gave me something you never could, tenderness." The words land like a blow to Tony's chest, tearing down his mask. He shouts, but the rage is really at himself, because what Carmela says is true. The final scenes revolve around Whitecaps itself. Because Tony already put down a deposit, the house cannot be sold to someone else. He pressures the owner for a refund, showing once again his aggressive, ruthless side in business. But the real issue is no longer the house, it's his marriage. In the end, Tony and Carmela sit in different rooms of their home alone. Both are silent. Their marriage is over. The camera lingers on Carmela's face, tired, broken, drained. Tony steps outside, looks up at the sky. A cigar in his hand, smoke drifts slowly upward. But nothing can fill the emptiness inside him. For Whitecaps is not just a house. It has become the symbol of a marriage in ruins.